Well, we are on to yet another hand embroidery video. This is going to be all satin stitching. So I'm going to show you, I've 3 little hearts outlined here and 2 leaves, and I'm going to show you some techniques using these 5 elements. I did mark these out with my Cricut washable fabric pen. Comes in handy, I'll tell you. So I'm going to set this aside. I have some DMC floss. I'm going to use these 3 colors on this particular section. So it's I've already loaded my needle with 718. I'm going to use this lighter pink for one section. It's 3608. And then I'm going to use this green. It's number 907 for the 2 leaves that I do with 2 different techniques. So let's go ahead and get started. So satin stitching is just a way of making nice long lines in the same direction to fill in the space of your item. So in my opinion, satin stitching looks best when you do it with a single piece of the floss, but for the purposes of just showing you the stitches today, I'm actually going to use the full 6 threads that are together to make one embroidery strand. So I'm going to use all 6. It's quite bulky that way, and it does not line up as nice as when you use a single strand. So I want to warn you that in the beginning. Now you could choose to do 1 strand, 2 strands, 3, 4, 5, 6, or more. But the more you do, the bulkier it gets and the less clean the finished product will be. So this very first heart, I'm going to show you the basic satin stitch, but I'm only going to do half of it with this 6 strand. I'm going to finish out the other half with a single strand so you can see the difference. So I'm going to go ahead and just come up at the point of my heart, and then I'm going to go ahead and come right down right in the peak there. Now I like to start in the center of my work, and I actually want to go on the outside edge of any markings I have on the fabric. So what I also like to do though is section this out a little bit so that my lines stay nice. So I'm going to go ahead and go about halfway up, and I'm going to come all the way up and make a nice parallel line to this initial stitch. Then I'm going to continue and come up, but I'm not going to go all the way to my edge. I'll go just before it though. Okay, now by doing that, I can know that I can just put one more stitch right here on this end. And now I can work my way back to center. So I'm going to come in here about halfway, come up, and I'm going to split the difference there. Then I'll come down here and split the difference here. Now some people like to, get the best use out of their embroidery floss, and instead of coming all the way from the bottom up to the top or top to bottom every time and making very bold loops, they like to come in next to their work and come from the same side so that they're not leaving a bunch of thread on the back side. For some reason they just, to me, my opinion, seem to lay nicer when you go ahead and just loop the cord. So I just do it. Now if I were working on something terribly big, maybe I wouldn't, but it just depends on what I'm doing. I think overall your finished work is just going to look better. So you can see here I'm just splitting the difference between those 2 sides, and then I think about 2 stitches will fit in between each of those sections. So I've got half of that heart done. Now I'm going to stop here. I'm going to get a single strand on my needle and work the other half in a single strand so you can see the difference. Now I lined these up very nice, so that looks great, but you can see my edge is a little bit ripply. So let's just see in comparison how that looks when it's not such a bulky piece. Okay, I've loaded up my needle with a single strand, and I've also zoomed in a little for you, and I'm just going to speed this part up. You've got the basics of how to do a satin stitch, I'm pretty sure. So let's just speed it up so that you can see side by side how those look next to each other.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here.
Okay, you should be able to see they're fairly distinct. I don't think I filled that in quite all the way, but you get the general idea of just how much more satiny that can look with a single strand versus kind of chunky here. So the thing is, I wouldn't do the satin stitch in a single strand unless I did some padding and I put it over the top of the padding. Okay, so I've loaded up that needle again, back just with the 6-stranded thread, and I'm going to come down to this little heart right down here, and I'm going to show you how to just pad your satin stitch. Now, if I were to pad my satin stitch, I would go ahead and pad it with something bulky like this 6-stranded thread, and then come over it with the single-stranded thread. That's just me, because it gives it a nice lift. If I just came in with such a fine thread, it wouldn't have a lot of lift. So basically, I'm going to outline my shape.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time.
Okay, so once I've done an outline of my shape, I want to also fill in with lines. So since my satin stitch is going to go vertically on this heart, I'm going to fill in horizontally with just a basic just a fill-in satin stitch. Now I'm not going to worry about covering 100%. I just want to have some thread in here that will raise up the threads that are crossing it. So now that we've finished all that padding, I'm going to go ahead and do my satin stitch over the top of that padding, just like I did in that first heart where I start at the bottom. You can start at the bottom or the top, that doesn't so much matter. But make sure you're going all the way outside of your stitches. You're not coming on the inside of that. It's not an outline that shows. It's underneath all of your satin stitches. So come all the way to the outside and then all the way to the outside on the top. Then you can go ahead and break up your sections again if that was helpful for you. I find for me I prefer that. I just tend to make better lines that way when I'm not starting on one end and going. Somehow they manage to shift on me, and this keeps me going in the right direction. So go ahead and break up my section. Also, by doing this sectioning, it brings me to the outside edge, and then I can work back towards the center and then do the other side. So I just like that it works out that way. All right, and now that I'm over to the edge, I'll start filling those little sections in and working my way back or walking back towards it.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to.
you should be able to see quite a difference there between, well, first of all, just the 6-stranded versus the single-stranded. You can see how fine that is. And then come over here with it filled in and just see how full that is. Now, of course, with the single strand, it would be a little less full, right? But it would make a nice thick look with a much more satiny finish. Now, what if you have a large area? What do you do about that? Well, I'm going to go ahead and do the top half of this heart in a dark color and the bottom half in a light color. And I'm going to have a nice firm edge along the outer edge here and on the bottom as well with the secondary color. But I'm going to have a short and long approach through the middle, which is a way to blend stitches together. Now you can do this with a single color or you can do it with multicolors if you're trying to have a soft edge in those colors. So let's go ahead and do that. And I'm going to start again in the center. And I am going to go ahead and just do a partial fill again and keep my lines going in the right directions.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together. It's so beautiful, you and me. Meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. Sometimes you need to go and take a step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell.
Okay, so you can see the top half of that heart is nicely filled in. We've got a nice, pretty nice line around the heart, except maybe that little corner there. And then we have a nice jagged edge here that we're going to fill in. So let me load up that needle with some light pink and we'll do the bottom half. Okay, so the lighter pink is loaded up and we're just going to get started now. What's nice about coming into the second half of this is that I already have an idea of where I need to go with that thread. So I just want to make sure that I'm coming up in between these lines because we want to fill in. It doesn't have to be a different color. It could be the same color. It would be something you would do when you had too large of an area as well. So you might have a clean edge, a jagged edge, another area with jagged edge, another area with jagged edge. You could also have multiple colors coming through. So you can do that with these jagged edges. And then when you get down, then you have your clean end at the finish. So I'm just doing it with the 2 shades, but it could elongate. You could fill in a fairly large area doing this type of stitching. So again, I'm just going to break up my work a little bit here. It's a little easier now because I have a good guide right above all my stitches. But I just like sectioning. Can you tell? All right, we'll speed this up, but you can get the idea of how to fill in.
like a bird on a tree. I'm just sitting here, I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together, it's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors.
Okay, I think you get the general idea. That's how you blend those. Again, with a single thread, you get much better definition, or blending, I'm sorry, less definition, more blending when you have single strands. So I'm just doing this 6 strand because it would take an awful lot of time on camera, and I think you get the idea. Okay, so we've got our hearts filled in here. Now we just have 2 leaves left, and I'm going to do 2 different techniques to fill in these leaves. So what I'm going to do is, with this first leaf, they're both in a fishbone kind of manner where the stitches are coming in and there's a little bit of crossover. One is just a hint of crossover, that's going to be this first leaf. The second one's going to have a full crossover, a real fishbone, so I'm going to show you that one second. So let's go ahead and get started. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start kind of in the same manner as I've done with the hearts, where I'm going to start here and come in the center, kind of low, and I'm going to just give my leaves a little direction so that I stay on track. Again, it's a fairly large section here, so I want to break it up and come to the outside of your blue line. Now when I come over to get the other side, I'm going to come right under the stitch that I've made, or right above it, either way. And then create your direction for that other side of the leaf. Stitch up the stem a little higher. Put in another little section. I don't want to make these sections too small. Just, you know, break it up enough that you'll be able to keep your stitches in a nice line. And I think that's enough, so I've basically made 3 sections out of those. So I'm going to go ahead and go on the top now, about halfway up here. And I'm going to just make 1 straight stitch to the point of the leaf. Now I'm going to go ahead and start working from side to side. So I'm going to come down 1 little step right next to it, basically, from my point, and I'm going to come right onto that center line. Now I'm going to come to the other side of my point, and I'm going to come over and just go right down a little. So I guess I would say I kind of go slightly over the line in this direction, and now from this side I'm going to cross over just slightly over the blue line onto that side. So it's just the tiniest hint of a crossover.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here, I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together, it's so beautiful, you and me. We meant to be in the great outdoors, forever free. step back to see the truth around you. From a distance you can tell. You and me were meant to be.
Okay, so we've got this leaf done. Now we're going to come in and do this second leaf, and this is really the full-on fishbone stitch. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start by coming up in about 2/3 of the way up my leaf pattern, and I'm going to make just one straight line up to the point of my leaf. Now mind you, I'm doing a leaf, but you can do this stitch for other things. It doesn't have to be for a leaf. But it does work really nicely when something has the flow like this. Leaves, feathers, things of that nature. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to come down to the outside edge of my leaf from that point, and I'm going to cross over and come just below my point outside of that blue line. Then I'm going to come over to the other side of that point from the top, and I'm going to cross down to the outside edge of that leaf. And I'm just going to follow those motions all the way down. So I'm going to come below my stitch here, right next to it. And I'm going to cross up to the top, right underneath that stitch. Cross over on the back, and I'll just continue, and I'm going to fill in the whole leaf doing that stitch.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit together.
Now, as you get down to where you're starting to run into these stitches that already exist, you're just going to go either right outside of them or in the same hole, but never inside of them. So when you come up, just make sure you're completely outside of that so you can cover it all up.
Like a bird on a tree, I'm just sitting here. I got time, it's clear to see. From up here, the world seems small. We can sit.
So when you get all the way down to the end of that stitch, you can again add just a couple little stem stitches to make your stem for your leaf. A stem stitch is just where you make a stitch, come up about halfway in between it, make another stitch. We'll just do 3 little stem stitches here. Come again about halfway in between, keeping your needle on the same side, and then you can finish that stitch by just drawing all the way through. So there you go, got even a little stem stitch lesson in that one. So there's some beautiful satin stitching, and you hopefully learned a little something here. Hopefully I showed enough variety that you get some ideas of what you can do with your projects. And if you like what you see, then make sure you hit that subscribe button and hit the little alarm or bell next to it, and that way when there's a new video it'll let you know. And if you like the videos, please let me know. Hit like and I love your comments. Thanks so much.